yeah, I'll just return to Ravensthorpe here and, you know, get my bearings, maybe, get some berries and stuff like that, maybe talk about some of the stuff that's been going on lately. I've mentioned in some other streams recently that I have a lot of family stuff going on, but I haven't gone into, like, any real detail whatsoever since it's, not exactly great stuff, and not exactly stuff that I want to be bringing open to, like, discussion, like, hey, let's vent all these feelings and everything that's going on, bring it all up. Which is why this is great in, you know, one of my Assassin's Creed streams where, you know, I like to talk about life stuff going on so that when the day comes that I eventually look back on this whole Assassin's Creed series one day, I can see where my life was at during different points, you know. This channel is the closest thing I have to a journal, and as my longest ongoing series, I like to kind of treat Assassin's Creed like that. But during more sensitive stuff like this, I kind of like to do it late at night, where, you know, it's quiet, you know, there's probably not much, if anyone, really tuning into the stream. I can just kind of ramble to myself, be speaking into the void here, and getting thoughts out there. You know, of course it is, you know, viewable to the public and all that, but, you know, tucked away in 200 something parts in one of my series, and you know, in the series where I'm doing a lot of journal entry like stuff anyway, is the case. So with a lot of stuff compounding at once, there's kind of two big things going on with my family life right now. There's something on my dad's side and something going on with my mom's side. So with my dad's side, the big thing that's going on right now is both my grandparents are 93. Supposed to be 94 here soon, I believe. Like, definitely getting on there in years. Dementia's getting pretty bad. My grandma's been in a care home for a while now because she was having these issues of blacking out, and we were really concerned about her being, like, on her own, slash, you know, if the two of them are living in a house together, that, you know, she's not going to be able to get the help that she needs if she, you know, blacks out and passes out. It sounds like that's not as bad nowadays, but it's still good to, you know, be in an environment where, you know, there's those that are there to help just in case, because we are worried. So she's been in a care home for a while, and my grandpa's been living on his own in the house for a decent while now. And he's slowly had to deal with losing the ability to do a lot of the things I used to be able to do, like driving when his license was revoked last year, when we got very concerned with some of his dementia, like turning into wrong lanes of the road, turning into oncoming traffic would happen sometimes. And we were like, yeah, no, he can't be allowed to drive anymore. There's no way. He's had to deal with giving that up. This was the last year of him being able to work away in the garden, and he was recently put into the same care home where my grandma is. So at least the two of them can be together there, but he's apparently not been in, like, the greatest mood about going in there since he went in about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, something like that. I've only been there once, and he, you know, seemed alright while I was around there, but still, I very much got the impression that he didn't feel like he belonged there and didn't necessarily want to be there. And that's what my dad has been telling me as well, is that, you know, he had agreed to go in there, and, you know, had agreed several times on the way there that, you know, this makes sense, that's okay. And then on getting there, you know, with his dementia, he forgets and then is mad, feeling like my dad and his sister, so my grandpa's two kids that live here in the province, I have another aunt that lives in the States there, are, you know, going behind his back and putting him away and, you know, having other people deal with him, like, that, you know, this is some terrible thing that they're doing, that they're just putting him there because of his age, because he's getting there in years, and there's nothing else wrong with him. Whereas he has memory issues, but he forgets that he has memory issues. So, it's, there's definitely been a lot of headbutting going on with, my dad and his dad recently. But, you know, him being in a care home is absolutely what's best for him now at this point. But, yeah, and now that there's no one in the house, that house needs to be completely emptied to prepare it for selling. And so my dad's been the main one on that. His sister, my aunt, has been helping a decent bit with that as well. So apparently for insurance purposes, someone needs to be living in that house like at least 3 days a week. And there's a lot of things to be going through in that house because from what I hear, my grandparents, and apparently my grandma especially, tended to like never really throw anything out. I've been in charge of like some of the computer stuff. So one of the computers there is this old Packard Bell computer from like the late 90s, probably running Windows 98 or something or other. And I still need to tinker around with that machine and get the data off of it. Well, this old Packard Bell computer, last week, I found the original box for it. So yeah, things weren't really thrown out very much in that household. My dad and I were out there last weekend, so I would have caught up on some stream stuff, but I was out of town, like staying there and helping sort through some stuff. I was going through like boxes of floppy disks. The most recently dated floppy disk was dated 2014. So I think I don't know anyone but my grandma that was using floppy disks up until 2014, and I was going through some of the info on some of these. Like I was putting it into the old computer that was still in the household there that was running Windows XP. And some of the files on some of these floppy disks were so old, I couldn't even open them. They were in this .cps format, which is like, I heard that it was like Microsoft Processor or something like that. Word processor, and it's like the thing that predated Microsoft Word. So Windows XP couldn't figure out how to decode it. And it was like, choose different decoding options that until you find the one that makes it look readable. So I was selecting things like Unicode, ASCII. Nothing was making it look readable. So I got it all on a USB drive. I'll plug it into this machine at some point and see about downloading some software that can decode these things properly and turn into a readable format. So half of it wasn't readable. The other half was readable since it was Word documents that were made on that machine. And there was a lot of old like newsletters that were written. There was like some short stories that my grandma wrote, like all sorts of memory kind of stuff there. And that computer was never hooked up to the internet. It was purely just a computer to type things on documents and printer, and sometimes play games like Spider Solitaire and stuff like that. That was the purpose of that machine, and that's all it did. So, lots of documents, lots of writings over time there. And I found a document that was about like the family history, like this is who's related to who, this is who's related to who, learn the names of my great-grandparents through stuff like that. That was kind of interesting. There was documents that were written like leading up to me being born. That was kind of interesting to read through, a little bit of a surreal experience there. So there was a lot of stuff to go through in that in the household there. And it was interesting working with floppy disks there. Like, computers would have still been using floppy disks for a little while by the time that I was using a computer at 2. But I never used a floppy disk growing up. So this was actually my first time using floppy disks, and it was interesting, just these 3.5-inch floppy disks. And yeah, so I was busy with that last weekend. My dad and I managed to fully fill the truck there with stuff to bring to the dump twice. And he's told me in the past few weeks here that he has filled the dumpster out back of the house like a full 5 times. And there's still more stuff to go through. And, I mean, it's also really hard figuring out what to go through, like what stuff is being kept, what stuff should be thrown away, what stuff has sentimental value, what stuff should go to them in the home, and all sorts of stuff. It's when I was there on the weekend, one of the things I was dug up was like a birthday card to me that was written for when I was like 8, I believe. Now, that's certainly something there. Any more berries around here that I can grab in game? So, lots of stuff in the household there, and it was a little bit of a surreal experience. So, I've heard about this going on for a while, and my dad would talk to his dad, and talk about like some of the stuff that he's been doing, and my grandpa will get mad and have a bit of a fit. So my dad has kind of stopped telling him stuff that he's been doing to the household. It was a similar thing with the Mercury truck when that was given to my dad several years ago, and he found that there were several issues with it, like the brakes. You hit the brakes and it would try to pull you into the ditch, and he would tell that to his dad, and his dad would get mad and be like, "What do you mean there's an issue with it? It was perfect when I had it." What did you do to it? So, when we were doing things to the Mercury, my dad kind of stopped telling his dad that, that there was stuff that he was doing to the Mercury truck. And now it's a similar situation with the house, where not as much stuff is being shared with my grandpa, because he, definitely has a hard time with these things in general. Letting go, accepting that, this stuff has to happen. It's, accepting that he's not, the end-all, be-all of deciding what's going to happen anymore. And, yeah, so there's a bit of strain on that side of the family there. And then with me staying in that house last weekend there, and in the old room that I used to stay in whenever I was, staying with my grandparents out of town there and going with them to, like, various car shows and parades and stuff like that. I had heard about the work being done on the house before and, stuff that my dad had been recounting. But actually staying there and being involved with it myself, I think, was very much a eye-opener, when I'd always associated this house with my grandparents. And, I go there and expect to see them there. And now this place that I associate with them is, empty, devoid of them. It's being gutted. There's stuff that's being pulled out everywhere. It's now a work zone that, is no longer necessarily associated with the presence of my grandparents, and I guess never will be. And again, like earlier this year, we would have had a family dinner there for, some holiday or other, without realizing at the time that it would be the last time. And, really, opens my eyes about how there's always going to be a last time for everything that you don't realize is the last time. And staying in that house was kind of eye-opening to that. Like, something that I'd known but not really thought about too much before. And, well, of course I had in other contexts, but you know what I mean. And, thinking that this place that I associated with them is now just a work zone, a job to get done. And pretty soon thereafter, like, it's probably not too far off the last time that I'll ever step into that house again. Which is, crazy to be thinking about there. And, something that I, figuring out wrapping my mind around to an extent there. And, it's hard on that whole side of the family, going through everything and, sorting everything out. My dad and I did a lot of work on the garage this last weekend while we were out there. And on the Sunday there, my aunt came out as well, and she was helping with some things, and as she's sorting things out and talking about the work so far, I see tears in her eyes about, the whole situation with, her dad as well there, the combativeness, needing to go through everything, accepting that they're not in a house anymore and never will be again, and that times are changing, and all this stuff there. It's difficult. And, it's definitely stressing out my dad a lot. So most of the time, he's not even here in the household. Usually he's out of town, staying in that house and putting more time in sorting through more stuff there. So I'm not seeing my dad too much nowadays, because he's busy with that. I see him probably a couple days a week. And it's hard on that side of the family. So that's been going on and off for a little while now. And, that's already kind of difficult enough as is. And then the other thing that's going on is kind of the even more pressing one, is where, about a month ago, right before Extra Life, my uncle started having a bit of heart issues earlier this year. For about the past half a year now, something like that, he started having heart issues. And right before Extra Life, he ended up going into the emergency room because of heart issues again. And in the emergency room, he ended up going into cardiac arrest. And, I saw the shocked look on my mom's face when she got the call of that, and, immediately headed out and, was extremely scared about the potential of losing her brother. And, so, like, he survived. He was okay, but completely unconscious for the course of about a week, including during Extra Life. So, make that 2 Extra Life events now, where there has been some very recent, very difficult life stuff going on, where 2 years ago, the day before Extra Life is when we lost Jesse. And then and now, like, this past Extra Life was literally just a couple days before it started, was that scare and worried about if he's gonna live, you know? So, you know, my little cousin there, RJ, that's his grandfather. So, you know, that was something that both of us were dealing with during Extra Life there, and, you know, part of me was wondering about even asking him, like, do you still want to go, like, or how are you feeling here? And, you know, we talked a little bit about the situation there, but both seemed to be of the stance of, like, hey, you know, there's some bad stuff going on here, but let's try not to worry about that too much for now and try to, you know, have some fun during this event for a good cause for the Stollery Children's Hospital there. So that's kind of what we tried to do. But, you know, both of us were clearly dealing with a lot at the time there. And it, you know, I could try to have, like, good energy during that event and stuff there for the 24-hour charity stream. But, you know, a lot of it is definitely putting up a front. Even now, a lot of it is still putting up a front to an extent. So he was completely unconscious. Not quite a coma per se, because he was responding to some stimuli for the course of about a week. And then since then he has woken up, and they are trying, he's up for periods of the day, and they're trying to get him onto, like, a more, like, routine schedule, like, be awake for these hours, be asleep for these hours, and all that. And he hasn't spoken, though. He hasn't said a word. And some days it sounds like are good days. My mom has said, like, some days it seems like, you know, he's making progress, he's improving. And then, like, immediately the next day it seems like things are going back down again. He's reverting, you know, more time, less responsive. He's struggling to, you know, even move fingers, stuff like that. He can barely move, can't speak right now, and it's, you know, he's looking at people, he's smiling sometimes at, you know, people saying jokes and stuff like that, which is good. But, you know, we're still really quite worried, and with all this back and forth, there's definitely a little bit of a worry of, you know, is he gonna recover? Is everything gonna be okay? Or are things still gonna potentially decline here? So, my mom hasn't really been working in the office all that much. She's usually working from home or going to the hospital and working on laptop by his bedside there. And I'm going in and visiting from time to time here as well. And, yeah, it's a lot there. So I've had a decent bit of family visiting here during that. Like, my aunt from BC is visiting now, but she has to go home relatively soon because she has a lot of stuff going on over at home too. My cousin and his girlfriend from BC came and spent a little bit of time here, but had to go back pretty soon after. They came and visited during Extra Life, actually. Like, I was quite surprised to see them on the rink while I was playing Metal Gear Solid 4 there, and they popped by and said hi, and, you know, it was nice to spend some time with them. My dad hosted a barbecue here while so much family was visiting, and, you know, spend some time together and stuff, which, you know, that was good, nice little distraction there, and also, you know, be offering one another our support in trying times there. And yeah, it's a bit of a situation here. So yeah, in the face of both things that are going on now with my mom's side of the family and dad's side of the family, one, my time is pretty limited when it comes to getting caught up on my crazy amounts of stream stuff going on. And two, and more so, my motivation is pretty limited as well. So, you know, I'm trying to do what I can here, get caught up, keep chipping away. But a decent bit of it is honestly putting up a front. And, you know, the way that I deal with serious stuff going on is by keeping my head down, chipping away at the stuff that really keeps me going, the stuff that drives me along. So even when, you know, I have typical stuff going on, I do generally like to still stream and play games and have fun and all that, and, you know, act like everything's hunky-dory, because that's kind of how I cope with things, I guess. So that's kind of what's going on here, and that's also why I don't really want to be sharing this during any other stream, and why I just say like, hey, you know, I have stuff going on that's keeping me busy, and I don't really elaborate anything more than that. And only really I'm elaborating here for posterity's sake, because I do like the idea of my overarching series of journal entries here is what this essentially is, because... Is that Sigurd that I just ran over? Yeah, it is. So that's kind of what this is my obligatory little bit of that while it's, you know, while it's going on. But I debate about not even bringing it up at all. But yeah, I kind of wanted to, and you know, have it on the record of this little exploration of what's going on with my life over the years across my stupid Assassin's Creed series here. And yeah, so I think days like today, for example, getting home from the long day of testing and then dinner at my Oma's place and just feeling like this wave of exhaustion, this wave of sleepiness, just needing to pass out, despite the fact that, you know, I'm fully caught up on sleep. I have no issue with the, you know, the amount of sleep I got. I got lots of sleep last night, but you know, I just find my energy levels getting low. I find myself getting exhausted a lot easier. I find my motivation for streaming a little bit lacking at times, and I distract myself with other projects like this. Then, yeah. I mean, don't really know what else to say there. So, yeah, we'll just hope for the best at this point, and I'll keep on plugging away at what I can here, but you know, I've been feeling some kind of way lately, is all. So yeah, I just wanted to get that out there. And now I will proceed to never talk about it unless there's like some update maybe during this series. Maybe I talk about something small. But all my other series is time to like never talk about this ever again. And pretend that I didn't have this discussion here. So anyway, yeah. Don't want to bring down the mood here too much. I just want to, you know, get some of this stuff out there. You know, share my headspace, essentially. I'll do some more Assassin's Creed Valhalla stuff before the end of the year here. You know, chip away at some of these more smaller mission little check boxes. But I do, with my limited stream time, want to commit to some of these other projects that are going on before, you know, I get completely overwhelmed. And all that. Get completely overwhelmed with game stuff in addition to all the life stuff here. And yeah, I'll do what I can here. You know, who knows? No guarantees with everything that's going on here. Maybe you'll only see me doing this again for the first time in the new year. Who knows? Won't be making any false promises here. But most likely I'll try to check off the smaller little checkboxes with this game before the end of the year. And then I can do the big stuff in the new year when hopefully stuff has been... hopefully life is looking a little bit brighter by then as well. So, yeah. I'm gonna try to get some sleep here. See ya.